See that lone pine up on that hill over there? What are we actually doing right now? The kids are just wild out there. They're wild. But they're having a good time, you know? They're having a good time. This is Untamed, Unbroken, The Adventurer's Guide, and I'm your host, Blake Bredesen. Welcome back to part 8 of our wilderness series, wilderness camping. Today we're just going to talk a little bit about camp life and activities, cooking, a little on nutrition. We covered nutrition, I think, pretty well already, but we'll talk about some cooking. When you're going out into the wilderness, cooking can be very simple, or it can be a time to explore some different ways to cook out in the wild and out in that backcountry, exploring, trying something new, getting better at something. So let's get into it. All right, let's get into the cooking gear. We talked about this before. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I like to use when I'm out on these trips. And it does depend on what kind of trip you have planned. If you're doing some kind of through hike and you got light gear, a solo stove or maybe a jet boil or the MSR reactor is what you're going to be doing, and maybe all you're doing is freeze-dried meals or dehydrated meals. You just have to boil water and add it, and you're good to go. Maybe that's all you're doing. But I have an MSR solo stove, which is really good for just boiling water real quickly or cooking on a smaller pot. So that's one. If you're going out, like people in the Boundary Waters here in Minnesota, they'll pack in 2-burner stoves and have like a whole gourmet camp kitchen setup. If you're solo camping, maybe you're not bringing in the 2-burner stove. I know I wouldn't personally. If I was solo camping, I'd be bringing in that solo stove for sure. Or I do have another, I don't know the brand. I just got it off Amazon. I was like, it's worth it. Let's try it for $20 or $25. But it is, you can only put one pot on it, but it has 3 bigger burners in a triangle shape. And it can use propane or that ISO Pro fuel that an MSR solo stove would use. So that's pretty sweet. You can use either or. It has a little adapter on there. But that's good for the bigger pots and pans. So if I'm going in a group, I'll bring that stove, the solo stove, and then depending on if there is fire bans in place or whatnot, we'll cook on the fire too. And that's great. So you can use basically 3 methods. The other method for cooking that I really enjoy, I don't use it all that much, but I always have it packed with, is a little foldable twig stove. It's about 6 inches high, maybe 4 inches wide, and it packs down to less than 1/2 of an inch thick. And then when it folds out, it's like 4x4 and 6 inches tall. You make a little fire with twigs in there, throw your pot on top and cook away, good to go. So it's fun to do things like that if you have some extra time. If you're in a campsite where you are like, that's your base camp for the week. Messing around with some different styles of cooking out there is kind of fun. It's fun to do. So think about that when you are planning, what kind of food you're bringing and cookware, different types of cookware, right? Like you can have stainless steel. You can bring that in. If you really want, you could pack in a cast iron Dutch oven or something. Again, you're not packing those on these ultralight trips, right? Like this goes without saying. I'm not speaking to that when I'm saying pack in a Dutch oven or pack in stainless steel. It's heavier. If you're going ultralight, you're going to pack titanium. So, and I have a titanium cook set, a little titanium pot. I think they're by the brand. You can get that on Amazon. Really nice. Used them. They work really well. I also have a GSI cookware set that's for like 2 people. That works really well too. And then I have a bigger stainless steel one that works really good for 4 to 6 people, or even bigger. You just have to bring in a few more utensils and stuff. But you want pots, pans, whatever you want, non-stick. Spatula is really nice. If you don't bring a spatula and you find that you need one and you have a plastic plate, you could cut that plastic plate in half, or not in half, sorry. Just cut the edge off so that the half of it is flat and there's no lip on the plate. And you can use that as your spatula. That's been done before. Utensils, I like a long spork. It's kind of a go-to, best of both worlds. Spoon, a little bit of stabbiness. It's good. It works. And I like the titanium ones. They're just nice and light. And then some of these cook sets too, like the GSI one I have, I think even this other stainless steel one, they nest all together into a relatively small space. And then they have a little cover. And on a couple of these things, those covers are also lined with a waterproofing layer. So you can turn that little thing into a sink basin, which is nice. Think about things like that for cleaning up. If you're going ultra light and all you have is a solo stove, a little 750 milliliter titanium pot, that's pretty much all you're going to need. That solo stove will fit right into that little titanium pot. You throw your lighter in there. You got your little stand it sits on. It all fits right into that little pot, and you super light and you're good to go. But if you're doing that, you're pretty much just doing dehydrated meals or freeze dried. So, nutritional planning talks about the freeze dried, dehydrated. Maybe you're making your own, you dehydrate your own, and you can maybe do a little more, make them taste a little bit better if you're doing your own versus freeze dried. Or, if you eat too many freeze dried, it's definitely coming out that other end in a not as nice way. You know what I'm talking about. So think about mix of carbs. Carbs is going to be your quick energy, proteins for muscle repair. If you're going on a really physical demanding trip, you're going to want to pack some proteins, protein powder, protein bars, canned meats, maybe dried meats, whatever, packing some jerky, and then fats for that sustained fuel. You want trail mix is like one of the best things for this, with like cashews and peanuts, other nuts, some dried fruits in there, throw in some M&Ms. That's your quick energy, right? You'll burn that right up. So thinking about some of that is, and what you're planning food wise is going to really determine what you're going to bring cooking wise. Or maybe what you have cooking wise is going to determine what you're bringing nutritional and food wise. Could be either or there. If you don't want to go buy new cooking gear, then you just plan with what you have. Let's move to some different cooking methods. So you could do some open fire cooking. You could try that, try something new, get that fire blazing, let the fire calm down, get those coals nice and hot, maybe separate off half those coals to cook on, and then move the other half and get a little fire going again. You can cook directly on the coals if you just got some meat or something, but you could use a little fire grate or a grill grate directly on the coals, or you could put a rock on each side and have it elevated off the coals an inch or so, or two, just depends on how hot those coals are. And practice makes perfect. The more you do this, the better you're going to get at various cooking methods. The foil packet, also known as hobo dinners, are fantastic. You just throw meat, vegetables, some seasoning, whatever else, into a little foil packet, fold that up, throw it on the coals or a little grill grate, and they're amazing. But that's also going to be, this stuff's going to be dependent on where you're going, the time of year, and the spoil factor. You want to think about those things ahead of time. So, you can even the backpacking stoves, those little ones, they make a lot of different, even pre-made pastas or things like that, pancakes. You can make all of that even on a little solo stove. I've done quite a bit of cooking just on a little solo stove, even up to a 6-quart pot. So the other things would be like a solar oven. You could do a solar oven if it's super sunny, or like a reflector oven if you wanted to bake a pie out there. Try something new. You can pack in a lot of food if you wish, and just, maybe you're not going in as far. You're staying in one spot for a long time and you want to pack in a bunch of food and try some wilderness cooking. It does hit different when you're eating like homemade food out in the wilderness. It tastes better. Everything tastes better out there for whatever reason. Just because your body knows it needs it. I don't know. It just tastes better out there. Think about some one pot recipes maybe. We talked about trail mix energy bars, granola, that on the go snacking is something you're going to want and need. You could, again, depending on the weather and that spoil factor, you could pre-make some stuff like soups or stews and reheat them. Not sure how well that would work, but that would work well in the spring or fall pretty well if it's cooler out and you don't have to worry about things going bad. Let's move on from the cooking into some camp activities. What you're going to be doing there. Maybe it's fishing. Maybe you're going on a fishing trip. That's your biggest thing. Maybe you want to walk or hike around camp. That's one thing I really like to do, is go on little walkabouts around the camp, exploring the area, walking the shoreline, checking things out, looking for wildlife, taking pictures. When you're out in the backcountry in these wilderness areas and you get a clear sky at night, looking up at the stars is one of the best things. Maybe you want to do some nighttime photography, take some pictures of those stars and test that out. See if you can get good at that. Creative outlets that you could do. Maybe you're bringing a sketchbook. You like to draw. You journal. People bring a ukulele with them and play music. If you're into yoga or meditation, you could do that. Reading. I know one big thing that we like to do is bring card games if I'm in a group. Play some cribbage. Bring a deck of cards. Especially if it's raining. It's really something you can just do under the tarp in camp. That is quite fun. So think about some of those things you want to do in and around camp. If you want to just relax and slow down, that's the biggest thing about camp life, is trying to slow down. And it's really difficult to do, especially if you don't spend a lot of time in the outdoors, or this is your first time. You might find it really hard those first few days to slow down. I know I always do, because you're going at Mach 100 here in your regular life, and you get out there and that's the only speed you know. And so it takes a while to slow down, and you slow down a little bit on a week trip, but I've heard from people that are on a 50-day trip, and they're on a solo trip even 50 days by themselves, and they're still slowing down after 50 days. It's just like it's a thing that never ends. Even a 3-week trip, you're still slowing down. So things to consider and think about for your camp activities, camp life. Think about maybe some different cooking methods or camp recipes you'd like to try, some different ways to cook over the fire. Think about balanced meals. That does it for part 8. Stay tuned. Next week is part 9, where we're going to get into communication and navigation. So a little bit deeper on that. We will be discussing some different satellite communication devices, map and compass skills, not getting super in depth on the map and compass skills, because it's a visual thing and a thing you need to do to really learn it. Just talking about some of those things, strategies for getting lost, navigating some various terrains like dense forest, mountainous, desert, open areas. So we'll get into that in part 9 next week. Stay wild. Thank you for sticking around. If you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Even one word, it helps a ton. Sincerely appreciate you guys. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the next one. Stay wild.
You've been listening to Untamed, Unbroken, a Lone Pine Adventures original podcast.